I'm Sambhavi Chandrashekar, Global Accessibility Lead at D2L Corporation. We're a learning technology innovation company based in Canada and with global operations. Our mission is to transform the way the world learns by reaching every learner, regardless of their age, abilities, or location. And Zero Project is very close to our hearts because we focus on the human and we look at technology as just a connector between the teacher and the learner. I'm also proud to be here as a part of the IAAP team. As the Vice Chair of the Global Leadership Council, we have a little booth out there, a shameless plug, please visit that. And I'm honored to share stage with Philip RIZCALLAH, Chief Executive Officer of Accessibility Standards Canada. Philip.
Thank you, Sam. So I'll just tell you a little bit about myself before we get into the session. So as you indicated, I'm the first Chief Executive Officer for Accessibility Standards Canada. Accessibility Standards Canada is a brand new organization within Canada, and our responsibility is primarily to develop standards in the area of accessibility, removing barriers to accessibility. We're the first of its kind in Canada, and I believe also in the world. And our goal is to create standards that will remove barriers to accessibility in a number of areas, including ICT, transportation, employment, built environment, communications, you name it, we're going to be developing standards in those areas. So I'm very, very proud to be here today with you, Sam.
Thank you.
Thanks. So, Sam, I think I'm going to lead off the questions, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So, I've had the privilege of working with you for a while and knowing you for a while. And I know that in your role with D2L, you have experience with ICT accessibility and inclusive learning. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Okay. If there's one message that I'd like to give the world about making learning systems accessible and completely effective, that would be holistic accessibility management. So at D2L, we have evolved a 7-point framework for that. And it starts with an inclusive mindset. Like across the organization, we need to develop an inclusive mindset, followed by compatible technology. Like if you're using learning technologies, you need to make sure that those technologies are compatible with the assistive technologies that might be used by teachers and learners. Next comes accessible content. The content needs to be made accessible so that all students with disabilities can access the content. And then comes inclusive delivery, which means the way in which teaching is done, teaching and learning is done, must be done inclusively, probably by using UDL and other mechanisms. Then comes regulatory compliance. You know, we are all involved in creating standards, and the standards go and sit inside regulations, and it's very important that leaders take these regulations and the associated standards seriously and align with the processes that they are doing. And sixth, I would say, is governance. This is not very much spoken about. Leaders need to be aware that accessibility needs governance in the sense of creating systems, creating processes that will measure and also monitor how accessibility is taking place. And last but not the least is to create collaborative communities, not just within the institutions, but across the institutions, across the country. And from that perspective, I would say that accessibility of anything, regardless of whether it's learning or anything, is a countrywide responsibility. And I'm so glad that Canada is leading it so well. As the CEO of Accessibility Standards Canada, I'm back at you. How do you think you're leading it, and what are you doing about unifying the country with standards?
Yeah, so I think we have a very unique approach in Canada. So I'm going to talk a little bit about maybe 4 elements of what Canada is doing, which makes us very unique. First is we have legislation. We have an Accessible Canada Act, and that act is very, very specific. It says Canada will be barrier-free by 2040. And in doing so, they've installed 3 pillars within that act, or 3 primary pillars. One of them would be my department, which is Accessible Standards Canada, where we develop standards to remove accessibility, barriers to accessibility. The other one is the commissioner, and the commissioner is basically your compliance officer. If or somebody who may actually impose penalties if you're not meeting the requirements that the government puts into the legislation. And then we have a chief accessibility officer who monitors and reports back to our minister. How are things going in the country? Are we meeting our objectives? Are we getting to the point that we need to get to a barrier-free Canada? So I think the fact that we have those three elements in law means that we're going to stand a much better chance than just creating a standard, leaving it there, and hoping somebody's going to take it up, and then there's no penalties if you don't do it. So I think the government got it right, because this is going to be really a catalyst to get things moving forward. I think the second element that's really unique about our organization and what we're doing that's quite different. Everybody's heard of standards, and everybody knows what a standard is. You sit on a committee, you develop a standard, and you hope that somebody takes up the standard. Where we're slightly different in the development of our standards is that once we've developed a standard, and I'll talk a little bit about how we develop these standards, but once we've actually developed this standard, we can go to the minister and say, put this into legislation. So that gives us a lot of power. The Act gives us that power. It gives me as the CEO and my board of directors that power to go forward and say, we want to put this into legislation. So it could become law. But when we develop our standards, what makes us very unique is that we develop our standards on the principle of equity. And what I mean by equity is that most standards that are developed in the world, most codes that are developed in the world are based on minimum acceptable. So minimum acceptable is fine, but generally that uses a streamlined approach where you're just looking at the masses. You're not looking at the outliers. And when we talk about accessibility, it's really the outliers that we're trying to capture within our equity-based standards, is what we like to call them. And we assume that if we capture the outliers, everybody in the middle gets to benefit from that. And so that's the principle that we use when we're developing our standards. And we've gone even a bit further. Our committees are made up of about 50+% of our members, experts that have lived experience or persons with disabilities. So this makes it very key. It makes what we develop very, very pertinent, because it's the community that uses it that are actually helping develop the regulations that will eventually come into force. And then I'll talk a little bit about our standards development process as well. Our standards process we're an accredited standards development organization, first of all. When we develop our standards, we bring input from experts from across the country, from across the world in some cases. So I think that once these standards are developed, there will be global uptake, or there's a possibility for global uptake, which is very, very key for us. And then I'll maybe just I'll finish it off with two small points. We wanted to be different than most organizations. And one way that we became very different than most organizations is that we instilled the walk within our office. We built the most accessible office in the country. We have provided all the accommodations that we can possibly provide for our staff. We have a large percentage of our staff being persons with disabilities and experts with disabilities. So we believe that really feeds into what we end up developing. And just to my very last point, and very quickly, we also fund a lot of research, working with the community of persons with disabilities that help support and feed into the development of our standards and our policies. So I'm going to maybe lob a question over to you if I can, Sam. So I've been fortunate enough to actually work with you and know you now for a number of years. And I know that you're working on a couple of the technical committees with us, one on artificial intelligence, one on information communication technology. In your view, where do you think we're heading with those two standards?
First off, I want to congratulate you and Canada as such for the research-based focus on developing standards and for including that many people with disabilities. And as the Vice Chairperson of the Accessible and Equitable Artificial Intelligence Systems Technical Committee and the ICT Products and Services Technical Committee, I can share some views about what's happening right now. So we recently adopted the EU's EN 301-549 ICT standards to harmonize with EU. And then we also hope to, along with EU, move the functional accessibility requirements part of it from a deficit model to a functional model. And what I mean by that is that instead of saying, oh, you have so-and-so disability, so we need to give you this such and such access method for you to be able to access, we say here are a range of access methods. and anybody can choose any of those based on your context. And we hope to move that after it's passed into the regulatory process, like Philip was saying. And the second one is about the AI. And what we are doing primarily here is to protect the rights of people with disabilities, because we know they can benefit maximum from AI, as well they are harmed to the maximum by AI, because like you rightly mentioned, they are the outliers, especially when you take decision-making systems using AI. The statistical reasoning just throws the outliers out. And that's one thing we are really very cautious about. And we want to keep that in mind, and also keep that in mind that people with disabilities should not just be consumers, but they should be active participants throughout the life cycle of the AI, whatever product it is, as designers, developers, implementers, evaluators, all of those roles. And we do hope to come up with one set of standards by 1 year, and then again move it into the regulatory process. As a parting thought, what I want to share is what our accessibility leaders have often said, like Carla Qualtrough and Stephanie Caddo: nothing without us, because everything is about us. There is no us and them. We are doing it for us. Is there anything you want to share?
Yeah, sure. I'll share something. I'll give you a personal thought. Developing standards is not rocket science. The technology is there. Everybody knows what they need. In some cases, the technology has to reach that point. But the community of persons with disabilities have been asking for things for years, and so really trying to determine exactly what it is we need to put in a standard, that can be done. That's a process, and we can do that. I think the real challenge lies in mindset change and attitudinal change. And I think once we get over that hurdle, we're going to have the success we're looking for. So I think we need to have a lot more effort put into changing the mindset of leaders, of decision makers, policy makers. And once we've done that, I think the tools that we're creating here was just kind of an afterthought. This is just the way we're going to develop our standards going forward. It's not going to be a separate standard for accessibility. It'll just be a standard dealing with ICT, and accessibility is just embedded in there, because leadership has bought into that. So I'll leave you with the word of work as hard as you can on your leadership, and keep reinforcing the need to include accessibility in every decision, whether it's employment, whether it's ICT, whether it's communication, whether it's buildings, whatever it is. Make sure that if they're not looking at it holistically, they should be looking at it holistically. And I'll probably leave it at that.
Wonderful,
Thank you.
Philip. And with your leadership, I'm sure Canada will continue to pioneer. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam.